Good morning, everyone. Josh, a severe weather. Happy Sunday to you. Reporting on vacation from Southwest Virginia, heading to Tennessee here later today. But wanted to do this video because things are quickly changing here with a storm that is getting ready to break some records for this early season here. Things getting very active, very dangerous, very fast. Here is a look at what I am watching for you guys here over the next several days. We have Hurricane Beryl, which has been upgraded to a Category 3 and is still strengthening quickly. And the official forecast has it getting to Category 4 strength as it moves through the Windward Islands here tomorrow morning. My forecast is going to be a little bit bolder, if you want to call it that, but I don't see this stopping anytime in the next 24 hours. I think it's got a legitimate chance of becoming a Category 5 for a brief amount of time. The other concern is that it is not done once it hits the Windward Islands, moving quickly through the very warm waters of the Caribbean, has eyes on Jamaica, maybe impacting Haiti and Dominican Republic, and then eventually the Yucatan Peninsula at the end of next week, potentially still has a strong hurricane. After that, the uncertainty grows, but models are trending into the Western Gulf. And those of you in Texas and Mexico and maybe even Louisiana definitely want to watch this one closely. I did put out this forecast because we're talking a week from today, next Sunday, when we may potentially have a hurricane in the Western Gulf threatening the U.S. and or Mexico. But that is still uncertain. The other concern is going to be another storm is going to follow in its footsteps here. Invest 96L set to form here probably by Tuesday or early on Wednesday, and maybe move over some of the same areas. Although I don't think that storm is going to be nearly as strong, it still obviously is going to be something that we need to be watching here. So this video is going to break down kind of the science behind things. Here's a look from Tomer Berg's website of Hurricane Beryl, expected officially to be a hurricane Category 4, but I do think it's going to potentially overachieve here and maybe get close to Category 5, if not exceed Category 5. Which would be remarkable for the beginning of July, the earliest such storm to get that strong. The only thing that comes remotely close would be Hurricane Emily in 2005, which also followed kind of this similar path, but didn't strengthen until a little bit later during its journey across the Caribbean Sea. There's also a system behind it that is going to likely form into a depression and maybe even our next tropical storm, probably in about 48 to 60 hours. And we need to keep an eye on that as well in the Windward Islands and the southern Leeward Islands and places beyond that. But I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. We also do have a disturbance in the Bay of Campeche that's starting to run out of room to develop, but has still a 50-50 chance here. And we may see some development on the Pacific side finally as we get into the beginning of next week. 40% chance for that to happen. Here's a look at the water vapor image. Very easy now to see Hurricane Beryl. Let me start to annotate some things for you guys to be able to see this. And I'm going to use this arrow here. You can see. Oh, let me try that again. Sorry about that. I'm trying some new things on a new device here, and that can sometimes cause issues. But anyway, here is Hurricane Beryl moving westward to west-northwestward at about 23 miles per hour. At this rate, it is going to be moving through the central and southern Windward Islands here during the morning tomorrow on Monday, first day of July. Here is our next system behind it, and not yet organized, but starting to take on at least a formation of something that has a decent chance of developing. It is almost exactly copying the exact same track of Beryl. And one might think, well, after a big storm, is this system even going to have a chance to develop? Well, there's enough space in here and enough low wind shear where that certainly is a possibility. And then we've got this disturbance, 94L in the Bay of Campeche, which so far has not taken on the shape of anything tight enough to become a tropical depression, but still has a little bit of a window to do that. But it is going to be fighting some challenging environmental conditions for it to even do something like that. But we'll give it a chance. It is not going to be another Alberto, but it will produce rain in some of the same places, which do need the rain, by the way, here across Mexico. Although anytime we deal with mountains and rain and tropical systems, we have to be concerned with flooding. So this is the water vapor image. Let's take a look at our next image from Tropical Tidbits. This is the infrared, and you will see a very well-defined Hurricane Beryl. The eye is now very clear and very visible, even on a satellite image of this scope here, covering 100 degrees of latitude. And then you can see the next disturbance behind it, which looks a little bit like what Beryl looked like 3 days ago. So I don't want to scare people, but obviously it's something that I'm watching for you guys. Even though most of this video is going to talk about Beryl, we do need to watch the one behind it. The good news is that following that, I don't see any threats coming, and we may get into a quieter period for the time being. But we've got to get through the next couple of weeks before we can catch our breaths, if that makes sense. Here's a look at the Central Atlantic main development region. Hurricane Alley is what it can be called. And you can see a very ideal setup here, even though Hurricane Beryl is relatively small for a storm of this magnitude. It is very much moving at a pace and supported by an environment that favors continued intensification. Very bad news here for these folks in the Windward Islands. There's just nothing that's really going to slow it down. And if it goes right in between Grenada and St. Vincent, it's going to barely go over any real estate and nothing really to slow it down. Once it gets into the Eastern Caribbean, there will be some more wind shear that it's going to be dealing with, but the bigger the storm gets or the stronger it gets, the more resilient I think it's going to end up being. And that's obviously of concern as well for those of you that might be in Jamaica and eventually in the Yucatan. The stronger the storm gets, the less likely it's going to weaken as quickly as maybe what the models have been showing. So that's what I'm watching for you guys here. This is Invest 96L. Models are starting to run on it, but until it forms, those models are probably going to change quite a bit. But generally speaking, it is kind of following the exact same track. It may gain a little bit more latitude here. And the other thing is, after this hurricane goes through the islands, we're only going to have 2 days before the next system moves into the area, which is heartbreaking, to be honest. I mean, yeah, this is hype-worthy weather, but I'm thinking like a resident of the Caribbean, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just can't even. So my thoughts and prayers are with everybody in the path of this storm, but I want you guys to at least just be ready for what's coming. You can see on the visible satellite this morning, very good outflow in all 4 quadrants of the storm. Not a very large storm, very compact, but very intense near the middle. The pressure continues to drop. This is Barbados over here. Right now, the storm looks like it's going to go by to the south of Barbados, but you are going to feel the effects of it. But certainly a dangerous system. Here's a look at the infrared image, and you can see the eye is cleared out. And I apologize, my internet's a little slower here. I'm on vacation. But you can see the eye is cleared out, it's growing, and the central dense overcast with the deeper colors here continues to improve. Planes have been flying through. We've had 2 planes through this morning. This is the latest recon data. This is on tropicaltidbits.com, showing the strongest winds just to the east of the eye, category 3 intensity. And it's getting ready to make another pass through the eye here. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is that the eye has cleared out and warmed up, and look at this drying that's going on here. This indicates a very healthy internal structure. We see moisture up to a certain level, then the divergence here of the temperature and the humidity, which indicates a warm and clear eye, which indicates a healthy storm. So not what we want to see, unfortunately. The hurricane hunters have made 2 passes through the center, and in the last hour, the pressure has dropped another 5 millibars. So we're seeing very intense and very incredible rates of intensification here, where the pressures drop from 969 to 964. For those of you keeping score at home, the lowest pressure from a hurricane in the month of June was Audrey in the Gulf. That was in the 940s. This one has a shot at getting there before midnight. It'll be close. Nonetheless, it's a dangerous storm. And out here, pressures are typically higher this time of the year because of the Bermuda high and the Azores high. So that's really just for record keeping, nothing more. Here's our rainfall forecast. And you can see we have the potential for extreme amounts of rain from Hurricane Beryl. This doesn't even include what's coming after it. But the areas likely to get hit hardest are windward-facing parts of these islands, the Grenadines, Grenada, maybe Tobago, Barbados, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Martinique, and Dominica all have the potential of receiving at least 4 inches of rain, so at least 100 millimeters. And some of these volcanic mountainous areas are probably going to pick up closer to a foot of rain, with more coming. The fortunate part about this is that it's not a massive storm. It looks intense in the core, but it's not massive. The hurricane force winds are very tight near the center. So same for the tropical storm. So where this eventually comes through is going to make a massive difference. A shift of 30 miles may be something that spares somebody here. Here's a look at the official forecast. Red indicates hurricane warnings. This is from Zoom Earth. And you can see the official track from the last 48 hours has shifted a little bit farther south of St. Vincent, now going over the Grenadines and kind of right on the line between the Grenadan part of this and the St. Vincent part of it. It's going to go over some smaller, kind of more exclusive islands, if this is correct, but there's a kind of uncertainty that includes basically the outer waters of Tobago, the outer waters of Bermuda or Barbados, sorry, and the northern portion of St. Vincent. You can see that that time frame is going to put it moving through here probably around lunchtime tomorrow, so right around noon, give or take a couple of hours, and it's moving very quickly. So hurricane force winds are probably only going to impact any given area for about an hour. It's moving that quickly, but it's going to pack a lot of punch with it. After the system moves through here, still showing major hurricane status. I personally think it's going to be closer to 160, category 5. I'll show you why in a minute, but the trend is still going up. And then we're going to see gradual weakening here as wind shear picks up a little bit, and we also lose a little bit of the humidity and moisture in place to sustain a well-defined system. But the stronger it gets now, the more resilient it's going to be. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is that models that were originally showing this going over or just north of Jamaica have shifted south a little bit. However, that's very close, too close for comfort if you're in Kingston or on the south coast of Jamaica, and we need to be watching this extremely closely. Same for the Cayman Islands as well. By the time we get to the end of the week, Thursday night, Friday morning, we may have a pretty intense hurricane heading towards Quintana Roo. They may also include Belize. It may include Cozumel, Cancun. Right now, the forecast takes it just south of Tulum and just north of Chetumal, but that could certainly change. Maybe it's Chetumal. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Elsewhere, you see Invest 94L. Really, its chance to develop is going to be in the next 18 to 24 hours. Then it's onshore near Veracruz. And then we've got our next system here, which has a 70% chance of development. It's not organized very broad right now, but after Beryl moves out of the way, it's got a good chance, I think, of becoming Chris or maybe even Debbie. We'll have to see how that works out. All right, so let's take another look here at our water vapor image, and you can see whatever wind shear that this system was fighting, it's pretty much fended off. It's got nothing stopping it, at least for the next couple of days. Just a moist environment here, very limited wind shear. And as we go on in time, you can see model guidance generally takes this system westward and then west-northwestward, and then maybe a bend back to the west here on Thursday, with a likely landfall in the Yucatan, potentially northern Belize, but most likely the Yucatan. No longer is there support for this to come south towards Honduras or Nicaragua. There are a couple of renegade models that try to curve this a little bit quicker towards Louisiana, but right now I'm not super sold on that happening. I can't say it won't happen, but I don't see it happening for the time being. The reason why is the models that are indicating this show this system on a larger scale not being as strong as it actually is. So the more likely scenario is across the Yucatan into the Western Gulf. After that, I think if you're in Texas, Mexico, maybe Southwest Louisiana, you very much need to be monitoring this closely. The ensembles have not changed a whole lot at all with this system. You can see the one thing of concern is that they all start to bend this more to the right in response to a weakness in the high pressure ridge. With it being 6 to 7 days away, there's not a whole lot of time, but there still is time for this to change. So that's what I'll be watching for you guys. The actual GFS model from this morning takes the system up towards Port Aransas, kind of halfway between Corpus and Houston. But again, there's a large amount of spread. Less than usual, though, for this this time in the future, but big enough of a spread for anybody really in this area to really need to be watching. I don't think Florida's in play at this point. I know this is one member, but it is a huge outlier, and I'm not really focused on that. The other concern here is that we've got an extreme amount of confidence in the next 72 hours of where this system is going and less spread than usual in the model guidance. So as a forecaster, that's what we like to see, but there still is spread and the confidence is still a little bit low. We still have some outliers, but generally speaking, the mean of this takes it into the Gulf of Mexico. It spends about 18 hours over the Yucatan, then it's right back over warmer waters with the possibility of maybe re-strengthening. This is the ship's forecast, and you can see there's still a very high chance in the next 24 hours that it does rapidly intensify some more, and even potentially another 50 miles per hour on top of the 120 that we're at right now in the next 36 hours. Probably isn't going to go higher than that, but just an extreme situation here. Sea surface temperatures are super warm. Relative humidity is favorable for the most part. Does dry out a little bit here by the time we get to the end of the week. Wind shear very low for the next 2 days and then climbs a little bit. But the stronger this thing gets before that wind shear picks up, the more resilient, the more likely it is to kind of hold its own, if that makes sense. Here's a look at the upper level pattern showing you where the systems are and where they're going. You can see there's a large region of high pressure over the Arc of Latex region here. There's a smaller area of high pressure over the Eastern Atlantic and a little bit of a ridge here east of, or a little bit of an upper level low and trough, what's called a TUT, tropical upper tropospheric trough, which is influencing a little bit more to the north. But that TUT is actually starting to lift away a little bit. And so high pressure should build in, and that may force this system to come just south of Jamaica rather than directly over it on Wednesday. After that, the ridge rebuilds. You can see it in place here over Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. And then as we move further into the future, that ridge shifts east to the Carolina coast next weekend. There's a trough that's going to come down towards Texas. And the timing on that is going to be extremely paramount on where the system ends up going. But because the high pressure area is set to shift eastward, there is an opening for this system to make more of a bend to the right. It's not a guarantee. Those of you who remember Hurricane Gilbert certainly know that there's no guarantees, but right now the general trend is kind of in that direction of Texas. It may be South Texas, it may be Upper Texas, it may be Northeast Mexico, but Texas is big enough of a state for this to be a concern. And landfall would put it here in about a week from now, sometime on Sunday. Again, there's a lot of time. So don't go evacuating or changing your plans yet, but don't get caught off guard on this either. I think you need to be starting to prepare just in case. The next system behind it, by the way, kind of follows the same path, close to Jamaica. This one can go anywhere in the Gulf. It could even head towards Florida. We don't really know. When you see upper level lows like this and ridges to the east, the certainty level drops off quite a bit. There's a lot of warm water over the Caribbean. So the wind shear that may impact this system will counter with extremely warm, deep ocean water that can support an intense storm. When it gets into the Gulf, there's still a significant amount of ocean heat content. This looks like it should in September. Here we are at the end of June. Just a very concerning look, unfortunately. Intensity forecast, our rapid intensification models, which have been doing pretty well, continue to uptrend and are now approaching Category 5 strength. We get to a point after about 24 to 36 hours as the system is in the Caribbean where it should start to drop off a little bit. There'll be internal fluctuations, there'll be eye wall replacements and gradual weakening, and it may weaken quick and then slow down and maybe try to re-strengthen. It may cycle off and on. But overall, the majority of our model guidance does show this as a major hurricane for a while and maybe weakening a little bit more by the time it moves on to the Yucatan. But that's not going to be until early in the day on Friday. There's some potential it could re-strengthen as it gets into the Gulf, but we're a little bit too far off to see that happen just yet. So here's the HWRF model showing an intense storm coming just south of Jamaica here Wednesday morning, leaving the Jamaican waters and heading towards the Caymans Wednesday night, still holding pressures in the 940s, which is pretty incredible. And then taking aim at the Yucatan Peninsula. This particular model has it really close to Tulum just after midnight, Thursday night, Friday morning, then weakening over land. But it will get back into the Gulf here by Saturday morning. Interestingly, it's got our next system coming through near Barbados. It's really on the edge here, but through Barbados, through St. Vincent, maybe St. Lucia, but it is a lot weaker. But it does have a chance to strengthen over the Eastern Caribbean. It may not be nearly as strong, but we could have a tropical storm or even a low-end hurricane if this model's correct. And I don't know how that's going to play out just yet. Here's a look at Beryl on the HWRF, and you can see the satellite presence is expected to improve, and the system is expected to grow, which is important. As it grows, it could impact more waters, it could impact more land, and then it goes through a weakening phase, and then the HWRF, which I don't know how reliable this is going to be, but it does show, looks like maybe a second wind here Thursday afternoon, Thursday night over warm waters as this comes onshore the Yucatan. Again, that's a ways off, so things could certainly change. Here's a look at the HAFS model. It's not quite as strong, but it's still pretty much there. It's got 130-mile-per-hour winds here tomorrow morning, right before lunchtime. The strongest of the winds actually just north of Grenada and over the Grenadines. St. Vincent could still be in play here, but this is more of a threat towards Grenada than it is St. Vincent. St. Lucia, Martinique, Barbados, you can all still see strong wind gusts, especially in those elevated areas on the hillsides. Hurricane force is not out of the question, but I'm thinking probably tropical storm force. Again, we've got some time before that's going to hit, but I would prepare for the worst. And then here's our new Invest 96L looking very disheveled for the time being, but conditions do improve for it in a couple of days here. The same place Beryl formed, it's got a chance of forming. Early model guidance right now follows a very similar path, albeit a little bit farther north, maybe towards St. Vincent and St. Lucia. but another track towards Jamaica potentially. This is a combination of the European and the GFS operational ensembles, though, are extremely spread out, and until it forms, we're just not going to know just yet. Here's another look at intensity from our latest model runs, and it's not strengthening nearly as quickly, but there's some potential it could still be a tropical storm or even a hurricane, adding kind of insult to injury in some of the same areas, but it's probably looking at landfall sometime on Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. So we've got about 2.5 days between the two storms. And after that, it could enter some hostile environment in the Western and Central Caribbean. And then here's a look at Invest 94L, and it just doesn't look like it's got what it takes at this point to become a tropical depression or storm. But there's still a window for that to happen. You can see the wind shear. You can see the dry air in place here. Just another rainmaker for Mexico coming on shore early in the day on Monday. Here's another look at the water vapor image. You can see the upper level low here is just impeding the progress of this system and keeping it from strengthening into much. And as a result, we're losing support for a tropical storm. At this point, at the very best, it's a tropical depression. One more look here real quick at our next invest. And you can see the spread is massive. There are tracks that are very similar to Beryl, but it's just way too uncertain at this point. We're just going to have to keep an eye on it, because if it does try to follow a similar track or maybe come up closer to Florida, the impact would be the week after next, sometime between July 9th and July 13th. So eyes will be on that later, but thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you all. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. And as always, just know that I am praying for everybody in the path of the storms. I'm a Christian man, and I put all my faith in God and give him all the glory for everything that I do. It's a blessing to be alive. It's a blessing to help others. And I pray that you're using your God-given talents and gifts to bless other people as well. I will talk to you all at some point here next week. Internet connection's going to be the big variable, but as always, appreciate you guys and hope you have a great Sunday. See you soon.